Yes, welcome back to the Magic Sponge podcast, a miracle cure for all your rugby league injury issues. I'm Brien, I'm the guy behind all the NRL Physio content you see on socials. My co-host James is here on a Sunday night, mate. This might be our longest podcast ever, I reckon. There has been absolute Origin carnage. It's been Supercoach fantasy carnage. It's just cooked, mate. Strap yourself in. It's going to be a big one. We've got a lot to talk about.
It's been a heck of a weekend, Brian, hasn't it? So looking forward to talking it all. And Origin just around the corner. Heaps to look forward to.
Mate, now I know we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, but I can't go on without the highlight of the week, mate. We talk about lots of friends of the shows, people who really appreciate it, and we know that Gus, our good friend Gus Gould, big fan of mine personally, I know, and big fan of the Magic Sponge. It was really good. Anybody who watched Women's Origin this week, which is about 2 million people, which is pretty impressive, would have heard him give a shout out to the Sponge. Now, I'm not tech savvy. I haven't been able to work it into the official, the theme song or the different things yet. But I do have the drop, mate. So hopefully everyone can hear this, the magic of Gus just giving us a shout out.
The Magic Sponge, Gus?
Magic Sponge fixed everything.
James, the Magic Sponge fixes everything. What more could you ask for from Gus?
It's the best. It's a good catch, Brian. I think we have Gus on the lead in there, but we need more of it. I think if we can get anything more from Gus Gould, from the godfather of rugby league, I'm all for it.
Mate, I love it. Now, look, we're recording a good time. It's like 8:50 on a Sunday. We seem to start later and later every Sunday, but just to humor us, because everyone's big Origin, at the moment, like Origin's such a big thing. Today has been absolutely cooked from a reporting injury, standpoint. I said in the broadcast channel, I think if journos went this hard every Sunday, like in terms of finding out injury info, it would just be manic, because I think the guys are just on their phones 24/7 over the next 2-3 days, because they've just come out with every player who's getting a scan on anything. We know about it at this point in time. But so we got the Queensland team, which it sounds like it's going to be Ponga, Coates, Rob Toyer, debut, Hammer in the centres, Val Holmes on the wing, Munster and DC, Mo Fodawaker, Harry Grant, Tino, then Cotter starting on an edge, Nanai and Carrigan, and then the bench of Dearden, Collins, Fermor and Loiero. And then we had the New South Wales team as well, which is Dylan Edwards, To'o, Crichton, Latrell, Lomax, Mitch Moses, Nathan Cleary, Mitch Barnett, Reece Robson, Payne Haas, Liam Martin, Angus Crichton, Isaiah Yeo. Then the bench, Connor Watson, Spencer Leniu, Hudson Young, Max King. Mate, I think the New South Wales team probably pretty much picks itself. I don't think there's too many big surprises there. Maybe you could go Zeus, our boy Max King, injury by the year 2024, getting a run on the wing. I'm a bit surprised that Keon didn't get in there somewhere, especially after his performance today. But what are your thoughts on both of the teams? We'll give a quick little rundown. I know we've got a few snippets that we can use here.
Yeah, we'll keep it short and snappy, mate. I think the New South Wales team, like you said, no real surprises there. I think it's a really solid team. If you look at that and you're upset as a New South Wales fans, I don't have much for you, really. I think everyone there's in pretty good nick. It's pretty good balance. A lot of guys there did the job last year at Suncorp. So I think if you're a New South Wales fan, you're pretty stoked. I think Queensland, there's a lot of vibe there. Rob Toyer, we spoke about it on the podcast there. What would your vibey pick be? Redcliffe Dolphin, Nudgee alumni, scholarship boy. He's straight out of your wheelhouse, Brian. For those who don't know, that ticks all three Brian's KPIs in terms of Nudgee, Redcliffe Dolphins fan, and former scholarship boy through Nudgee. So big ups there for Rob Toyer. Big fan of yours, Brian, and also the Magic Sponge. I don't rate Ruben Cotter on an edge. I think we've said that many times. But aside from that, I don't mind it. I think Corey Horsburgh's a bit hard done by. I think when you look at our middle selections, I would probably take Horsburgh over Fodawaker. I'd probably take him over Loiero as well. But I don't think there was that many out of the scope options. I love Al on a wing, and I like Toyer at centre. I think that's not a bad selection. He hasn't played many games. But just off the back of what he did against Herbie Farnworth that night, I think Val on a wing is good for yardage, which we are going to need. So I don't mind that selection there, given that Murray Taulagi was going to be missing with a calf anyway, which we'll talk to later. So, yeah, I don't mind it. I don't think there's any sort of absolute, dead shit selection, so to speak, but I quite like it. Yourself, Brian, what's your reaction to the two squads?
Yeah, mate, I think New South Wales pretty much the big one I kind of tossed up, which, you and I are the biggest Tommy Turbo fans going, right? But you just couldn't have picked him, not off. He just doesn't look his usual self, right?
And
Like, I'm
Lomax
sure
was
you'll say.
so good. Like, the guy had 28 runs the other night. Like, you can't deny that. I don't
No.
think.
Yeah, and like my only thing was To'o. Like, To'o didn't look fantastic last time, but whether he copped a cork or something, and he's had the bye week this week. But yeah, I just don't think you could have picked Turbo off the back of that. Off the back of what he's shown so far. And that, like, I genuinely mean that. Like, if that team had have included Turbo over any of those back four, I would have felt better about it as a Queenslander, genuinely. And I love Turbo. From the Queensland perspective, I'm as up and about. Like, I could not be more up and about Val on the wing. I've said multiple times, Val, a bit like my other agenda, which came true today, which is AJ Brimson fullback, James, which I will mention was back at fullback.
Right. Yeah.
Love to see it, even though the Titans got rolled. But still, yeah, so up and about Val on the wing. Love it. But yeah, Reuben Cotter on an edge. I hope he spends like 10 minutes there, and then they bring on Bo Firma, who should just be playing 80 minutes anyway. But yeah, mate, I think the Hawes, like, I just don't think Mo Fotuaika has done much at Origin level. Like, and I think the Hawes is that firebrand, get him in there and get him around the boys. And yeah, look, I'm just looking forward to it, mate. It'll be good. I would have been, really disappointed if Billy had gone with a few selections that would have had me, like, really a bit concerned. One thing I will do is throw, and this isn't my point, this is Supercoach Spy. He kind of said, and it is a good point if it's true. I don't remember if this actually happened, but I think the one game, what he's saying is the one game that Latrell started at centre this year was up on Rob Toya in the Chooks Rabbits game. And apparently Toya, defended well on Latrell in that game. Now, it was Latrell's first game back, but maybe that is playing into Billy's, selection there, right? He's gone, seen a good game from Toya. But yeah, up and about that. Like, always, we've got injuries left, right, and centre in both squads. So when you've got that, yeah, I think going with youth and going with the excitement is the way to go.
Yeah, I'll rate that, mate. I think the other thing is people love a smoky. There needs to be one every year, doesn't there? And Rob Toya was a genuine smoky. I don't think anyone had even mentioned his name, but it's an interesting one. It's going to be big headlines for the week coming up for this game at Suncorp, isn't it?
100%, mate. All right, guys. So, let's get into it because it's just going to be bonkers tonight. So, as always, we're on YouTube. Check us out over there or anywhere you get your podcast. This is where we talk about all things injuries in the NRL. We loop it all back to Supercoach and Fantasy for all you fiends out there. Let's get into the injury wrap for this week, which is brought to you by Pain Pod, drug-free pain relief anyone can use.
I don't know exactly what he's done. I would have thought it was an ankle, but I'm just guessing.
He shouldn't be out for a long period of time. I'm no doctor. We have to wait for the scans, obviously, but that'd be more positive than negative.
Round 11 with 2 HIAs here to begin off with. So Jakey Turbo from up in that Manly game and Dan Suluka Fifita from the Bulldogs here, Brien. Both probably going to go into the protocols now. I guess for them, they both play round 12, so they'll miss round 12, obviously, with the Bulldogs being on the bye in round 13. So a little bit of time off there for Suluka Fifita, I'd say.
Yeah, both cat ones and both pretty clear cat ones, like not the ones that, can be challenged, I don't think. The main concern there is probably Jake Turbo being his second of the like the last month. He had another one in round 7, I think, somewhere around there. So yeah, that like 2 in a month, it wouldn't surprise me if potentially he misses round 13 as well. Maybe they give him a couple of weeks to kind of, get over this one because, look, the one thing I will say, and I always, reiterate this is, and this is to say that even though his symptoms look quite significant, like there seem to be some convulsing, that kind of thing, that doesn't tend to be tied to a more severe concussion in inverted commas over the, I guess the entire length of the concussion in that. And the reason that I emphasize that isn't to try and downplay the significance of Gerbo's concussion, because any concussion is significant. It's more just to stop people from being like, oh, it didn't seem like much at the time. It was a minor thing. Like Will Warbrick is the perfect example here, right? Like he didn't even fail a HIA, had some symptoms the next day, and he's still out weeks and weeks and weeks down the track. So it's just to say that concussion, no matter how it presents, if it presents severe at the start, you can have a generally straightforward recovery overall and get through the protocols. but the other way you can have like very minor symptomology at the start and then just have a horrid time with it. So yeah, just the fact that he's had 2 in quick succession probably points to like a higher chance of an extended recovery. But yeah, there was once again a few. I put out the call for for questions this week for the podcast, and there were so many, asked about Max King and Jazz Tavanga and these kind of guys who, seem to go down and either not fail their HIAs and not have HIAs. So yeah, the roundabout or the merry-go-round continued with HIAs this week again, which is no surprise.
Yeah, Control C, Control V with that stuff, Brian. Let's launch into the games proper. So Knights versus Eels was first on the slate. We'll talk injuries and then fantasy fallout for this one. So Bradman Best was ruled out pre-game with a fairly high-grade hamstring injury. Dill Lucas with a shoulder concern, sounds like instability. Jake Saifiti with a calf concern. Kalyn Ponga and Fletcher Sharpe listed here with lower leg concerns. And Ryley Smith with a calf issue. Sort of seems more like a cork rather than a strain, I'd say, for Ryley Smith owners and Supercoach, doesn't it, Brian?
Yeah, so those last 3 in Bree, so Ryley Smith was just a calf cork by all accounts, so no real concerns there. Ponga, yeah, it looked like he just copped a knock. He's been named for Origin. There's been no reports he's in any doubt. He said post-match he was fine. And Fletcher Sharpe, it just looked like he copped a knock as well, just like a direct blow to the lower leg, and he ran it out, so he was sweet. Jacob Saifiti with the calf, that, repeat calf injuries now. So once again, like, whenever you get a recurrence, it's usually the recovery is going to be longer again. So even if it's a grade 1, even though a grade 1, you're looking at 1 to 3 weeks, you start to extend it out 2 to 4, 3 to 5 weeks, even for a minor one, just because it's a recurrence and scar tissue on top of scar tissue, compensation on top of compensation, these kind of things, the risk is just higher. So yeah, I don't know. I think he was being talked as a potential for Origin on the bench, but yeah, I just don't think Origin 1 or Origin 2 even is probably going to be realistic for him. Now, the 2 big ones, so we'll talk about Bradman Best first, because he's probably not as Supercoach relevant, but more, I guess, physio relevant in that he had 5 hamstring injuries last year. Now another hamstring injury at training this week. Interesting to hear Adam O'Brien gave some injury info, James. Would you believe it? Like, actually gave us some stuff in the post-match presser, because he said the damage isn't super horrible, but it's just the spot that it's in. Apparently he has pretty good. Yeah, so he had pretty good strength is what AOB was saying, but it's more the spot in where it is. So once again, we've spoken about this in the past, more than likely tendon. I would be thinking tendon, poorer blood supply, a lot of force going through that small tendon, just slower healing times, and particularly if it's up the proximal or up the buttock end of the hamstring, you'd I can completely understand why they're gonna, they'd take time with him anyway, because it's this is 6th hamstring injury in the last 18 months. They're going to extend that recovery time. So I would be expecting at least a month, even for a minor one, but 6 weeks plus potentially at this point in time, considering his history. So, yeah, I think there's going to be some opportunity there for someone at Newcastle to step into that role. Now, the guy who filled it over the weekend, Dylan Lucas, he had a typical shoulder instability event. Your Toby Couchman's, Adam Reynolds even recently, and then Clint Gutherson had one over the weekend too, where, you're reaching out, land on that outstretched arm, and that shoulder shifts. Now, that happened to Dylan Lucas early in the game, and then he played through, but came off towards the end with the arm hanging low. So the biggest thing with Lucas here is that, look, he's probably had scans. The worrisome thing about it is the unpredictability of this situation. So, as I said, Couchman just gives me a perfect example to point to almost immediately, where Couchman had scans. They found that there was labral ligament damage, but they're like, no, he should be sweet. It's not too bad. We'll strap it up. He played the next week. He then suffered an aggravation, and now he's out for 3-4 weeks. He's also a risk of needing shoulder reconstruction surgery if that 3-4 weeks doesn't stabilize that shoulder enough for him to keep going. He's also a risk of shoulder reconstruction if then he comes back and aggravates it again. So Dylan Lucas, he can sit anywhere on that spectrum. His ligament and labrum or cartilage damage might not quite be as bad as Couchman's, but it just, it throws up a lot of uncertainty around him. Him moving to the centers as well from a perspective of somebody who owns him from a SuperCoach manner just isn't great either. So James, like, how are you feeling? Like pretty similar to Couchman, obviously our analysis from like a anatomical point of view and performance point of view, it's mainly that increased risk of aggravation. You've probably got more fires to put out this week, but let's say that next week you don't have too many fires. Would you be thinking about moving Dylan Lucas on if he's still in the centres?
I would be a yes, just based on the uncertainty of it. The Knights have got great coverage through this period, Brien, and Dylan Lucas is an elite option if he's playing left edge. But again, that puts him at high risk of re-injury. And the Knights going busted. If they were flying and he was on that left edge, I'd be way more inclined. But I think given that he's maxed out at, I think he's about 670 now as well, I think that's a really, really nice way to move, sideways or down and then go elsewhere at other positions. So that's what I would be doing. I'd be looking to move on. What about yourself? Do you own
Yes.
Lucas, don't you? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I do. It's one of those controversial situations. Like, I'm actually pretty well placed for 12 next week. The thing I would love most and would consider holding him is if he had 2-3 weeks off now. Like, if he had 2-3 weeks off now and say he was going to be back for 50, because I think they play 15 as well. So if he was, say, going to take a couple of weeks off and be back for 15, I would hold, because I'd hope that they found a center option by then and they've given him a couple of weeks to kind of strengthen up that shoulder really well, and it gives him the best possible chance of kind of, not aggravating it. But if he's back again next week, it just concerns me. I mean, I'm not going to trade him out next week. But yeah, from a physio perspective, definitely having those couple of weeks off to kind of stabilize and strengthen, it would make me so much more confident about a season-long hold. At the moment, I'm just not confident at all. So if we're standing here round 13, we're recording the podcast next week, and I don't have too many fires, and then there's nothing too much out of Origin, I would not be surprised if we're talking about my trade plans in SuperCoach Corner to move him on, I reckon.
Yeah, he's actually 690 as well, Brien.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, you're so close to Kaliro or even Herbie Farnworth, who are, elite options at the position there. So I don't think it's a situation that I'm going to be looking to hold on to be honest. But it might be something that emerges. He may get named this week and he may line up. Who knows? Like, it's just going to be one of those situations where you may have other fires to put out. And you might want to take a 1 or 2 week wait and see. Move on to the Bulldogs versus Roosters next, Brien. So out of this one, big fantasy implications for Jacob Kiraz. He's got a moderate grade calf injury. Naufahu Whyte has got a medial knee injury, and Steve Crichton's been reported as a groin concern. I didn't see any doubt around him getting named for Origin, though. Did you?
So Campbell Graham is on standby for him.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so Campbell Graham's 18th at the moment. So Stephen Crichton not in the way it's been phrased to me is not in as much doubt as Payne Haas. So Payne Haas is more, and we'll talk about him in a second, 50-50 option, whereas Crichton played through the groin issue on the game. So he knew about it prior, and he played through it because, he just wanted to play tough for the boys. So, like, pretty typical for minor groin issues. Like we've spoken about in the past, they can linger around, but once again, you can play through them. And we've seen guys like Nicho Hynes not goal kicking, Stephen Crichton here not goal kicking, but you can kind of play through. And Crichton, he's played lights out over the last couple of weeks. So, not in significant doubt, but it's more like, once again, that in-game aggravation, like provided he doesn't have to kick, it's probably pretty low. But just something to monitor. But I still would be surprised if he doesn't, come out and play a usual Stephen Crichton rep game come Wednesday week. Naufahu Whyte, MCL, pretty typical contact mechanism. You saw that knee duck in. By all accounts, I think he's escaped with a minor-ish kind of grade because they're thinking he'll miss 3 weeks. So for anybody who has him, he should be back around round 15. That's the aim, because the Chooks have the bye in round 14, so be back in 15. So that's, you're usually looking at on the border of a grade 1 to 2 MCL injury there. Like one of the like tougher efforts, because he suffered it. It was a pretty nasty mechanism, and got up and played the ball because he knew that, that it was 10 seconds to go in the game. He knew he needed to get it off. So it's pretty impressive. I will say that whoever the tackler was from the Bulldogs is lucky to get off there because what's the hooker from? I'm so bad with names. The hooker from Penrith, Mitch Kenny. Got done for that one a couple of weeks ago, which was nowhere as bad as that one that the guy did. So once again the merry-go-round continues with those tackles, and then Kiraz, mate, with the calf. Like we haven't had, I don't think we've had final confirmation from our good friend, and friend of the show, Phil Gould, on this one. This is just a Danny Weidler report. So it's look, I'm pretty sure Danny Weidler's got a pretty direct line to Gus. So if he's saying it, then it's probably pretty legit. At least 4 weeks was what they were saying at first. So this is a big blow because we are A, Jacob Kiraz lovers, but B, owners. Well, I am. Did you end up?
I'm not actually. No, I went separately, so I dodged that bullet, but took a few more. Don't worry.
No, fair enough. So I've got him, and he's going to make way for me once we get confirmation. Like if it's only minor, I'll probably look to hold because I'm not super stressed about minor calf injuries all that much, and willing to take, because Kiraz is as elite and probably one of the top options at center there, CTW there. But if it's going to be 4 weeks and he's going to miss 12 and 15, I just don't think I can carry someone who's worth 700k, especially when I could use that cash to get me up to like a Teddy or something like that. If you're a Kiraz owner, are you kind of like, I would plant my flag once again at like round 15. If there was a chance to have him round 15, I think I'd hold. But if not, then I think he's probably a sell. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so as well. It depends on how badly you need money and how bad you need numbers, I suppose. If you're banking on him for 12, then you might want to move to someone who plays 12. But if not, if you keep him tucked away and hold him, he's not a bad hold. But he is worth 760, Brien, isn't he? He's pretty up there in terms of price.
He'll be up. Yeah, he'll be up around 800k.
He'll be close to 800 actually. Yeah, it's hard to sort of, if you're not a Teddy owner, you probably want to get him to Teddy through the flex somehow, I dare say. So you might want to move on because he's sort of maxed out at price, hasn't he? Like you could probably get him on the swing in the middle of the year when he's come back from injury, I'd say. So that'd be the way I'd take him on. Next one was Dolphins v Warriors. So big one for the Finns here, Brien. So in terrible luck again for Tom Gilbert, who suffered what seems to be a serious pec injury. So obviously Origin is probably done and dusted for him. He's probably touch and go for the rest of the season as well, isn't he? Unless the Finns make their annual deep finals run that we call every year on the Sponge.
Mate, he'll be back. They're fighting for the minor premiership. Mate, this is just cooked. Like the poor bugger. I'm a Finns fan, so like maybe biased, but I don't think there's many people out there who dislike the way he goes about the game. We've obviously all seen what he's been through over the last couple of years. Had plenty of questions about, has his prior injury struggles had something to do with this one? And it didn't look like it. It looked like a pretty typical pec mechanism injury in that, he got burnt, stuck the arm out and it got pulled back. And that's how we see pecs go all the time. So his previous shoulder reconstruction was on the right, and it was a couple of years ago. So it's very unlikely that you're seeing like compensation patterns, this far down the track, and especially to the opposite side as well. So he was in a sling, had it iced up. Like they're not going to use a sling for like a minor, and they can identify pec ruptures pretty well. And it's very rare for explosive mechanisms like that to end up in just a strain, because a lot of power goes through that big pec muscle. And you've got a smallish kind of tendon that attaches into the front of the shoulder. So usually it just rips off, unfortunately. So if that is confirmed, which I'm expecting it to be, you're looking at 10 to 14 weeks, so around 3 months. So maybe, mid round 20s, like, around 23, 24, you could start to consider a Tom Gilbert return. But, he's the kind of guy who will want to come back, right? Like he's the kind of guy, he's the captain of the club. He's probably going to want to come back. It is one thing, James, and not to kick kicks a man while he's down, but just something that I'd watched the opening 30. I was there at the game. I was really interested because I wanted to see, we'd spoken about Gilbert. He was pretty much a lock for Queensland by the sounds of things on an edge before he suffered this injury. And we'd kind of spoken about it that we just didn't, in the past before we knew he was a lock, that we just didn't see it this year. Like we know the vibes are high. The Queensland spirit is huge with Tom. But just coming off the ACL, especially playing on an edge where like that lateral mobility is so huge, he just didn't look fantastic, I thought, by the eye test. And so when I went to the game this weekend, I was like, I'm going to really keep an eye on him, like see how he goes. And mate, like so many times, he just his line speed is phenomenal. Like he gets up so quick and he's in their faces. But the number of times I was like, oh shit, he's going to do his ACL again, because he'd just get done by a quick bit of like sideways movement and he'd throw the leg out and he'd like step to try and get them and miss them. And I was like, oh man, like I don't know whether he needs to like, and this is me not, I'm not a footy expert by any means, more an injury expert, kind of seeing those motions where he's regularly shooting up so hard and then kind of getting dusted and having to compensate for that. So, I like whether that played a role a little bit as well, is his lateral mobility got beaten to the outside and that kind of contributed. As I said, not trying to kick a guy while he's down, but that was something that I did really want to watch. As much as I had my two daughters there with me kind of juggling, that was something that I wanted to keep an eye on. And I think you were of a pretty similar opinion on Gilbert before the injury too, hey?
Yeah, it was the same as, what we're talking about with Ruben Cotter on an edge. I'm just not a huge fan of it. I think they're just best served in the middle. They're really good.
He's a great 13, mate. He's a great 13.
Totally agree. So I think if he was going to wear maroon and he played in the middle, I'm all for it. I'm here for that. And I think, if you look at the team, the way it's set up, I'd even be okay if they played, Carrigan up front and then played him at 13 and Mo Fodawaker sort of missed out. I think that's how big I am on him. I think he could easily start in that team, similar to Cotter as well. I think that we've got better edge options that are more specific to that role that give you way more in attack and defense as well. So yeah, that's where I sort of sit on that one as well. So I agree with you completely. Next game, Brian, was the Cowboys versus Manly. We talked about.
Hang on, I was going to say we got to throw Murray Taulagi in there. I totally forgot.
Yeah, I was going to just mention him there. Yep. He was ruled out, obviously, via the press with a calf concern. Have we heard severity on that one there, Brian?
Yeah, mate. He is one who we haven't got severity at the moment, but more, I mean, it's obviously enough to rule him out for at least the next 10 days. So you'd be thinking, potentially moderate grade. Although in saying that, he played out the game. So a bit like Kiraz, if you played out the game, you'd hope. Well, Kiraz played out the game, but he's out for a month as well. So so like the toughness of these guys is just insane. So I think we've got a few questions to talk about where it's talking about guys, how can they kind of play out the game and it not just be minor. And here's a perfect example, Taulagi, he's played out the full 80 minutes and now he's got a calf injury that's ruling him out. So I'm not overly concerned about him in the long term, but obviously enough to rule him out for Origin 1.
Yeah, it's a big blow for the Maroons there, but I think we've got, I don't mind the way we're set up for it. So I think that's probably one we can cover, given Xavier Coates gets the left wing, which is where he's done all his damage this year. So I actually don't mind it from a team setup perspective. Sharks vs Storm was the next one here, Brian. So the Sharkies lost two outside backs early. Sam Stonestreet's been reported as a ankle syndesmosis injury. Jesse Ramian passed his HIA in the 14th minute, but it was actually he didn't come back on because of an eye concern. And then Alec MacDonald has been reported as a quad injury there, Brian. I don't have anything on severity with Alec MacDonald, and I can't see expected timeout on the casualty ward either. Do you have any word on Alec MacDonald?
Yeah, no, it was just in the warm-up. So I'd be thinking minor. Like I doubt he's going to have torn his quad, in the warm-up, even though they do warm up pretty hard. So you'd usually be thinking kind of 1 to 3 weeks for that kind of minor quad issue. Another big quad injury that we'll talk about very, very soon. Sam Stonestreet with a syndesmosis, mate, like a syndesmosis injury, mate, that was as much out of the textbook. Like if anybody's watching and like, oh, you know, what do you mean out of the textbook? Like that rotation to the outside and then you saw it snap back in. Like it's that external rotation that often points us to that syndesmosis injury. It's when that foot rotates the outside. It actually like pushes. So you've got your main shin bone, which is your tibia, and then you've got your fibula on the outside. When the foot rotates to the outside, it actually pulls those two bones apart right above your ankle. So that's kind of like your very textbook way. And I don't think in my time I've seen a more obvious one than that. It was that violent that I think you have to worry about a fracture in that case, specifically a fibula fracture. So yeah, like at least I think there's no way he's not requiring tightrope surgery. Shout out Arthrex, good friends of the show, for that. But yeah, potentially a fracture and, you know, a little bit longer, 8 to 12 weeks for that kind of thing if there is a fracture as well. Jesse Ramian, he passed his HIA, but he's off with an eye injury. They said it wasn't even, it's not a fractured cheekbone either. It was literally just a deep poke to the eye. So that starts to bring in things like retina injuries, these kind of things. Is it just a scratch to the eyeball? We've seen guys need surgery and be out for 4 to 6 weeks for like collapsed retinas and those kind of things. We've also seen scratched eyes, you know, come back the next week. So it'll just depend on his vision, really. You know, it depends on, like, obviously if he needs surgery and stuff, that's a bit different, but it'll depend on whether he can see by this time next week, which, look, I'm not an ophthalmologist by any means, but yeah, there's a bit of variety there. I think people have asked, like, how does he get to go off for a HIA with an eye injury? And while I do agree to an extent, it's one of those things where, like, the teams are going to rort that every day of the week because technically he copped a blow to the head or the face and he now has blurred vision. So while it's very much more than likely that it's an eye injury, those two things, if you write that in a report, that could potentially cause a concussion as well. So they're going to be allowed to use that every time because we have seen guys cop knocks in around the eye and it end up being a concussion. Like those two things aren't mutually exclusive. So yeah, that's going to happen every time. Yeah, I think, like, you're a Jesse Ramian owner from a Supercoach perspective. I think just hold and wait and see what comes out. Hey.
Yeah, that's the plan at the moment, mate. I was pretty disappointed because he's been pumping out 50 in base and power, and then he put up 6 for me when I really needed him, and now I'm sort of sweating that he might not be back because Raymond's only 1% owned, so I'm only one of the 2,000 other dickheads who decided to take a punt on him. So I probably don't need to sort of cry myself a river there too much, Brien, but one to keep an eye on, pun intended with that as well. Broncos versus Dragons was the next one. So big names here. Dylan Egan with an ACL injury for the Dragons, really epic Supercoach player this year. He's really emerged there, so that's really bad news for him, going to be missing the year. Then Payne Haas with a quad injury, Paddy Carrigan with sort of like a fairly deep laceration to his lip, and then Selwyn Cobbo has been reported as possibly a wrist fracture too, Brien, there. So big injuries out of that game, and Supercoach relevant, a lot of those guys.
Yeah, so Cobbo, wrist, they sound pretty resigned to it being a fracture. Look, fair go to Cobbo again here, like toughen this out because he suffered it when Gutho scored his try and strapped it up, went out to the wing at stages, then finished off a fullback. Like, yeah, just there's been so many, like, it's just been such a crazy week, so many crazy injuries that I think, like, these tough efforts are all going to go to the wayside. But you've got Selwyn Cobbo, you know, Kiraz, Talangi, like, all playing through these injuries, to full time. Like, playing through a fractured wrist is fair go. So, yeah, like, I guess not congratulations goes out to Cobbo, but yeah, just commendable effort there. If it is fractured, like, you can have minor fractures in the wrist, which are around 4 weeks, but it can extend out to kind of 8 to 10 weeks. So I usually just say 1 to 2 months as my general range for that. Paddy Carrigan with the lip laceration looked pretty nasty. I think a lot of people were jumping up and down about a potential broken jaw. He was playing around with his jaw in the in the sheds after the game, to be fair. But look, by all accounts, they've checked that by now, and it's just the nasty lip laceration. So, like the media's already started, James, the, Queensland are the underdogs. Pat Carrigan's gone to see a plastic surgeon to have his face reconstructed, and he's got
He doesn't need any face work, that guy. If anyone didn't need plastics, it's Paddy Carrigan. He's good looking, that rooster. Oh my God.
Yeah, mate. That's why they're going to a plastics, mate. They
Well,
got to
yeah,
keep the
it's
money
just like,
maker.
yeah, it's like, this is perfection. We need to clone this everywhere. That's what they said.
Yeah, mate. I wouldn't be surprised they're flying someone in, from over in LA, Hollywood, or something like that. One of the guys who works on the Hollywood Stars, just to maintain that money maker. Because look, like I just would, it would have to get infected for him to miss it. They're like, he's still got to get cleared, but 10 days, more than enough time. They might just avoid a bit of contact to avoid it opening up over the next 10 days. There is a risk if he cops a blow to that same spot again, a la Jeremy Marshall-King, it will easier open back up because it'll be weak. But yeah, I don't see this. So yeah, if you see much of the carry on this week about, being in doubt or whatever, I just very much doubt it. Dylan Egan with the ACL, that was really devastating to see for a young fella. He was just absolutely killing it from a footy perspective. Just come on for the Dragons, one of their shining lights as a young fella. And they've just had, because they had Ryan Couchman as well with the ACL go down too. So 2 young forwards with heaps of promise go down. That's a really, really rough trot for them. So feel for him. He's obviously going to be out for 9 months, need reconstruction surgery. We're talking about it like it is a confirmed thing. Like when the medical staff, their hands-on testing is very, very accurate. It's about 95, 96% accurate at identifying when there is an ACL injury there. And MRI machines are only about that accurate as well. So that's why I talk about it so confidently when I get it back. I think there's only been, probably in the time I've tracked it since like 2017-ish in the NRL, there's only been like 1 or 2 times that, it's been reported as a potential ACL injury. The one I can always remember is Andrew Fifita. I think he had like a non-contact change of direction, and then he had a really loose knee, but it was because he had no PCL in that knee from a previous injury. And so they just kind of said, they looked at the mechanism. They went, he did a big change of direction. They felt his knee, went, it's loose as hell. But it ended up being a meniscus injury. So he was really lucky there. But I just don't see that being the case for Dylan Egan. So so obviously from a SuperCoach perspective, he is a trade out. I left Payne Haas to last, mate, because I think this is probably the most relevant one from both an Origin and a SuperCoach perspective. So he's got a quad injury that he did play through to full time. He's going for scans tomorrow. He's considered at the moment a 50-50 proposition. Now, you would usually say good signs that he played through till full time. But as I said, we have seen guys like Kiraz, Murray Taulagi. Now, I know it's calves. I would argue it is harder to play through a significant calf injury for a footy player than it is to play through a more significant quad injury. Like quads, we've seen guys time and time again play through minor quad issues going into games. They can get away with it. Whereas calves, there you drive. I'm not saying that quads don't drive, but calves are very tough to play through. So I think the thing is at the moment is that there's no guarantees with it. Like I'm very nervously, I mean, from a Queensland perspective, you'd very much like to face a team that doesn't have Payne Haas in it. But from a SuperCoach perspective, as an owner, I am definitely a little bit nervous. What would your approach to him, my SuperCoach mastermind co-host, mate? How are you approaching Payne Haas? Because the big thing for me here, which I think is very relevant, and I think what we'll talk about next week, is the likelihood of players to back up, I think, is a big one. We're going to have less games to talk about next week, so I really wanted to dive into it next week. In terms of players who are carrying niggling injuries, they're probably less likely to back up. I just think this puts Payne Haas in the bracket that he is just not going to back up in round 13. Like, I just can't see how they would play him, because he's probably going to play pretty big minutes if he is required to play for New South Wales. So if we kind of came to the conclusion that, yep, he's going to play for New South Wales, you're not going to back up, you're probably still holding him, aren't you?
It's a good question because you got to ask. He's going to miss 12. He's probably not going to back up with 13. He's got the Titans in 14. Then they buy around 15.
Yeah.
So you could be without for 4 weeks. So it's a question worth asking. But then, are you going to sell one of the premium options as it stands in SuperCoach, who's averaging, what is he averaging? It's probably nearly 100, isn't it? Still, all said and done, like it's. The average is still 94 plus this round. Like he's still in the low mid 90s. Like it's tough, but I wouldn't begrudge anyone for doing it. Like I think if you said, all right, he's going to miss 12. If he does play Origin, he's definitely not going to back up. I wouldn't say. So you miss 13. He might play 14 against the Titans and go into a bye 15 and have to back up again. Like there's every chance he could play one game in the next 5, or maybe none in the next 5. It just really depends. Like. It's one that you need to ponder, I reckon. It's because there are other options in the front row spot. There's heaps of options this year, Brien. You can go Joey Taps or AFB. Definitely, Aaron Clark has been lighting it up, and you're going to save bulk coin by doing that. And you're probably going to get a number for at least 3 or 4 of those 4 or 5 games. Like it's a good question to ask.
Yeah, mate. I think for me, the way I could best put it is that if I didn't have. I've got like 3 or 4 guys at the moment who are like guaranteed to miss. Like I've got your Kiraz, your Dylan Egan, like these kind of guys who I'm like they're definitely going to miss a month or longer. Like I've got 2 or 3 trades definitely locked in for this week coming. So if you have none of those concerns, I would be, if I had none of those concerns, I would be on this show talking about how I'm trading out Payne Haas to get to Teddy is how I would be talking. Like if Kiraz wasn't injured, if Dylan Egan wasn't injured, Dylan Egan's got great buy coverage. Kiraz has got great buy coverage. Who's another guy? Like Dylan Lucas has got, concerns hanging over him as well. We'll be waiting till Christmas to hear from the Knights as to what the, injury is on Dylan Lucas. But that's the way that I would put it, is that if I have none of those concerns and you're sitting there with a relatively healthy squad, I would be trading out Payne Haas.
Yep.
Because I just think with the amount of cash you have there and like his involvement in games and then also, early showers, like the Bronx need him, to be fair. Like they are going like absolute bustards. But what they also don't need is for Payne Haas to play 2 games in 4 days, tear his quad and be out for 6 weeks, So like that's the thing is like, I would almost, once again, it's a bit of a weird thing to say, but if he gets ruled out of Origin, but it's only
then you hold.
I'd
say exactly the same thing. Yeah.
100%. Like if he gets ruled out of Origin, but they're like, oh, it's only a minor one, but we just wanted him to be fitter for camp and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
If that's the case, I'm holding for 100% sure. But it's almost like, if he plays, I'd be off him.
Yeah, it's going to be a watch and wait, isn't it? I think it'll be really interesting to see how it lines up there. We'll move on to the Raiders vs Titans. Actually, no injuries out of that one to talk through, Brien. From the Tigers v Bunnies, only Samuela Fainu from the Tigers here with a knee concern. I haven't seen much around mechanism or what we're dealing with here with the knee. Any updates?
Yeah, Ewan Aiken just fell on it as he was going heading towards the try line. So it looked like an MCL mechanism. I'll be honest, this was the game that was going on while I was preparing for this, dealing with all the Origin injuries. So I only got a quick look at it in terms of whether it's the same knee as the one he's been struggling with, that patella instability from earlier in the year. So I'm not sure if it is the same knee or not. So yeah, definitely some concern there for like an MCL kind of mechanism. So he could be facing a few weeks on the sidelines, unfortunately.
Nice one, Brien. And then the wrap up, the women's Origin. Sad to see the Queenslanders going down 2-0 here. So sad times for us. But out of this one, Jess Sergis was, I think, neck or concussion diagnosis. She looked pretty out of it at the end of the game there. Tamika Upton with a glute or hamstring concern. And then Jamie Chapman was just reported as cramps. Jamie Chapman just carves us up, doesn't she, Brien? really hurts my feelings. But, hopefully she gets the best out of Hammer. So when Queensland lines up in the next week,
Mate,
is what I'll say to
as
that.
long as Hammer does the same, then
then we're all good.
we'll be happy. And it's funny because like you've seen tries from Hammer like that, right?
Oh.
To where he had that one where Ben Hunt was playing in the centers and they shifted it
put
out
him
to
away.
the edge, put him
God.
away, and he's like
We're doing
swerved
10 to
in.
12, yeah.
Yeah, and James. 8 in a row, never forget.
That's right.
But like Chapman, it was a mirror image, just on the other side of the field. She's just an absolute gun. But cramp. I don't think there's anything there. Tamika Upton didn't look good. Looked like a glute-ish. It was a bit of a weird mechanism, but what I would say, and this comes back, mate, the state of that field. Like you hear about me going to bat for Suncorp all the time. This is to show that I'm not biased. Like I don't love all groundsmen or something. Like I'm not just going into bat for groundsmen. Like that field was horrific. Like the drainage was so bad. And look, while we've said wet fields tend to be protective of injury in general, that is on the assumption that it doesn't get like that, because most fields will not get like that, because that is wet to an extreme. It's soaked, James, some would say. Some would say it is absolutely soaked. So when it is soaked like that, what it does is it increases the load through muscles as you are trying to propel yourself across the surface. So I compare it to, like, if I over exaggerate, it's like trying to run in quicksand. It takes a lot more effort from your muscles to do it. And so while Tamika Upton, her mechanism didn't look like anything too crazy, it almost looked like it could have been like an ACL. Once again, non-contact, she kind of stopped and planted. But I would say it's more just that accumulation of muscle load over the time. So this is one where potentially a muscle strain could have had contribution from the surface. I know people are probably sick of hearing me say it's not the surface, it's not the surface. Here I am, James. Let's mark it down in the calendar. I'm saying this could have had something to do with the surface. Jess Sergis with she apparently got a crusher, but also copped a blow to the head. Like a lot of the symptoms that they were describing, she was disoriented. She looked very vacant at times. That is very concussion symptom-like. So I would more than likely say it is delayed concussion symptoms. Like a burner, like you can have like disorientation from like the pain and neural, stuff from a burner, but it didn't look, that would usually be pretty immediate, whereas concussion can be quite delayed in terms of its presentation. So I'd more than likely say she'll be going through some concussion protocol stuff. But Upton is the one who I'm most in doubt about heading into Origin 3. I think that Queensland could be without her.
Yeah, she didn't look great, did she, Brian? So I think you're right. I think we'll probably line up minus Tamika Upton for Game 3 to salvage some pride in the maroon jersey. We'll wrap things up there, Brian, and move into the questions. So thank you to everyone who submitted these through the broadcast channel as per usual. Question 1, this is a good question, Brian, is a huge decision this week in SuperCoach. Tommy Turbo, is he a buy this week? He looks well below 100%, but if he misses Origin, which he has, would you bring him in rather than Teddy for SuperCoach purposes? I'll tell you what, I probably would look at James Tedesco first, but given I'm a Tedesco owner, Turbo is massively on my radar this week.
Yeah, mate, I'm making this exact decision. So thank you to this question asker, because I'm going to need not only your input, but I'll be putting it to the crowd this week, because a Tom Trbojevic at what's he, 550, probably cheaper, this week. I'll let you find it while I waffle on. But he's going to be a good $450K cheaper than Teddy. But mate, I can probably only bring in one, because I probably want to hold Drinky and I want to hold Paps. So I can only really bring in one of them. I could theoretically bring in two, but I don't really want to get rid of either of those other guys. For me, I'm still probably bringing in Teddy, because I think, apart from the performance stuff, I just think Teddy's going to score way more. Turbo does look well below 100%. I'd want to see it from Turbo before I bring him in. I wouldn't even be opposed to bringing in Teddy for the next 2 weeks. And then if Turbo looks the goods, Turbo still looks like he's not going to be picked for Origin, I go Teddy to Turbo in round 14 or something like
Yeah.
that, you know?
Yeah, that's
Like
fair
get
shout.
Teddy in for the next 2 weeks, hope that Teddy keeps scoring well, and then if Turbo looks decent in the next couple of weeks, bring him in, because Manly still play the next 2 major buys, right? But I think the thing with Turbo, from what it sounds like, is that it would only take, although Campbell Graham is 18th man, but it would only take like an injury to one of those 4 outside backs for Turbo to be a red hot chance, whereas Teddy kind of needs Dylan Edwards to get injured. You know, like he needs Dylan Edwards to get injured to be considered. So, yeah, that's another component for me, is that I'd probably want to bring in the guy who's less likely to be affected or a chance to play Origin later in the in the series. Now, granted, New South Wales are going to get absolutely walloped in game 1, James. So there's going to be a lot of pressure to put a lot of changes in and those kind of things. But I do think Dylan Edwards, provided he doesn't get injured, is a pretty big lock. Even if they lose Origin 1, I think they would they'd stick with him for Origin 2 with the combos and all that kind of stuff. So I'm leaning Teddy at this point in time, with the thought that I could go Teddy to Turbo in that round 14 bye. That's kind of what my plan that I've come up with at this point in time. How do you rate that, and what price will Turbo be at? Did you have a look there?
So it looks like it's going to be at around about 550, give or take. So he's going to lose 69 grand from 623. So whatever the maths is on that, I don't have a brain at the moment. So I can't quite figure that out. It might even be in the 540s and thereabouts. So it's going to be very cheap. Straight across from Kalyn Ponga, if you're a Kalyn Ponga owner. So for me, because I have Tedesco, because I have Pappenhausen and Ponga, I'm going to move Ponga to Turbo. But I like your plan of getting Tedesco in. I think his ceiling is much, much, much higher than Turbo's is, and you're really rolling the dice on Turbo, so you're probably moving on from Kalyn Ponga and upgrading to Teddy. What an upgrade! Whereas I'm going Ponga to Turbo. You're like, oh, am I going from damaged goods? Doesn't feel as quite as inspiring or quite as confidence building. But because the other thing for me is I don't have Drinkwater, and I was looking at getting him in 13, but now he's got a 14 rolling through his average. Like, that might not be around 13 combo anymore. That might be like a 14 or a 15 if he can shed big money really quickly. But yeah, Tom's still got a pretty high break even in his rolling as well after this one. So he's got 120 on his break even, but he's still 550. So I mean, like, come on, what more do you want? Just get him in at 550 would be my advice if you already own Tedesco. I think if you already have Tedesco, I think Tom is a really good shout this week, straight across from Ponga. But otherwise, I would look at Tedesco every day of the week. I think he's the must-have over this period, to be honest.
Yeah, I think if Drinky didn't have the 14, I'd wait till next week. But I think now that Drinky's got the 14 in his rolling average, I think you can take the risk on Turbo.
Yeah, I agree.
Provided you haven't like max traded or something, then maybe. But even if you have max traded, just fucking go for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah, get amongst it. But Drinky's got 147 as you break even next week, so he may well get that. Who knows? He's been on fire this year, apart from the week just gone. But it's going to be one to watch. I think you want to play fullback roulette. And the thing is, Manly aren't losing that many. They're only really losing DCE, and that's it for the Origin period. So I think, from the way I look at it, I think Tom's a pretty good shout. Like, you're rolling the dice, but the pedigree's there, Brian. Like, we know
the only thing I would say, mate, I don't know what their reserve halves situation is like, but is there a chance? This is a red hot take, mate. Luke Brooks to half, Tommy Turbo to 5'8", and Lehigh Hopewadi to fullback, because they've spoken about Tom going to the halves, mate. They've talked about it. They have. So I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there for a bit of interest.
Well, yeah, it'd be funny.
Like, I'll put it this way: if it's Siebes too, mate. So
true. Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. It's Siebes, but if that happens, there's no way you're trading him in, right? Like, you can't trade him in at 5'8".
I don't think you can. Surely not. I probably will anyway. Like, I'm sick for it. I mean, common sense brain should say no, but like froth brain says absolutely get him in. Like, get him amongst it. Yeah, so we'll wait and see on that one. But I think Tommy is a shout. Question number 2, Brian, from the broadcast channel. Can you explain the Greg Marzhew knee situation? Trying to decide if he's worth holding on to for Supercoach purposes or worth selling.
Yeah, mate, I did a little post on that this week. Like, this is where injury information not coming out, it's all over the shop, because effectively it was reported as a medial, like an MCL injury. 4 to 6 weeks was the initial report, and then Adam O'Brien came out and said he's had surgery and could be back sooner than the 4 to 6 weeks because he's a quick healer and all that kind of stuff. Mate, like, I don't know about you. And once again, as I said, our good friends at Arthrex have some pretty, cutting edge stuff going on down there in the surgical world. But I don't know of an MCL surgery that is getting you back in anything under, like, the quickest was 5 weeks, which was Tommy Turbo that we've tracked, but that was for an avulsion, which is a pretty rare kind of injury. And even that was the quickest, like, we've seen for an avulsion return by about 2 weeks. So, yeah, I just, like, if he's saying he's going to be back quicker than 4 to 6 weeks, that means 3 weeks is an option. Like, you're not coming back. Like, I'm happy to plant my flag and say you're not coming back in 3 weeks from any MCL surgery that I am aware of. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I don't think so either. Like, you don't see MCL surgery that much anyway. So
Yeah,
if
correct.
it is surgery, it's got to be very high grade and very significant. So either avulsion, like you mentioned, or really high grade. So I don't think you're going to see it under 4 weeks. The only weird thing was they're talking like MCL surgery, but then his knee was on his like lateral.
Yeah.
The ice was on the lateral knee in the game. So whether he's had, lateral meniscectomy or lateral meniscus, debridement, whatever, I don't know. The whole thing's just complete unknown. I don't know if Barry Tui's got the source or not there, Brian. If Barry Tui
He said
could tell us,
medial.
then-
He said medial 4 to 6
Okay.
weeks was what he
well,
said.
Barry would know.
Yeah, there's so many different options, which is hard here. Like, the surgical procedure could be that he had PRP injected into his, into his MCL potentially, which is just a, thing to try and help it heal. There's a lot of different options. Effectively, I traded out Marshu this week.
Yeah, I did too.
If you've still held him through that, unless he's named this week, I would just trade him out because there's a red hot chance that he's not there for round 14 either.
Yeah, I'd be trading as well, would be my advice.
Sorry, round
Question
15.
round 15. Yeah, good shout. Question 3, Brian, is about Brandon Smith. How come he's able to run around and kick a footy around at training, but he's still about a month away from seeing NRL action?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting one, and one that I certainly go through all the time with my athletes, is that I think a really interesting thing, if you've never been through an ACL reconstruction and rehab yourself, and James, you can probably talk to this from a personal point of view as well as a physio point of view, but we often have to be the handbrakes in that, like, guys, once you've had ACL surgery, it's a 9-month recovery, but by like 4 or 5 months, guys are running pretty quick in a straight line. They're feeling really good. They've got full range. They, like, if you said to them right then and there, hey, you can return, like that, they'd go back. If you somehow, like, pass them. But effectively, there's a few things at play here. Is that we know, and the more research that comes out, we know that returning before 9 months, it's an increased risk of re-injury. So between 6 and 9 months, your re-injury risks decrease typically by about 50% each month. But then after 9 months, as long as you're ticking all the boxes, it doesn't seem to change all that much from about 9 to 18 months. So from 9 months, as long as you're ticking all the boxes, that's a pretty good place to be. And we've seen that pretty consistently across the NRL. So even most guys, they're looking good at 6 months. They're feeling really, really good. The teams know that, hey, if we rush this guy back, he's just an increased risk of injury. We know the stats. And probably a big thing that works towards that, is like the training that you can do between 6 and 9 months. So because at 6 months, you're often feeling really good, you can put a lot of high intensity training into that leg to make sure that all your dynamic, muscle activation, strength, balance, jumping, landing, stability, all those kind of things are really, really top notch in that 6 to 9 month period. But then also that it's like, I guess in a roundabout way, the healing of the ligament. We know that the healing of the ligament doesn't truly happen till at least kind of 12 to 18 months post, which is probably why there's another drop in re-injury rate from 18 months onwards. But the longer you give that ligament to heal, the better. But I think it's more probably the training that you're able to do between 6 to 9 months to kind of really build up your performance, but also your safety from re-injury risk. So yeah, you're just very rarely going to see guys come back before 9 months in this day and age generally, unless you've got a guy like at the end of his career and he's happy to take some risks. Like Souths want Brandon, not only for this season, but seasons into the future. So they're going to look after him. Have I missed any components there, mate, that you can think
No,
of?
I don't think so. Probably just the aerobic load as well. Like, he's been away from, top grade footy for a long period of time. So I think you just sometimes you need to get Ks under your belt and get that end stage, dynamic stuff back in and the proprioceptive stuff. Because the ACL's got a really big proprioceptive function for people playing at home. That's like joint position sense and awareness and that. So he might just be getting the final things tuned up there and getting the reps into that and getting the load into that he needs to perform at a really high level. So it might be some stuff based on, even testing as well. He might be marginally short in terms of his strength testing or his dynamic test functions and things like that, his outcome measures. So there's some things that you sort of need to tick off before you can get it all sorted and get back onto the field. So next question, Brien, I think to wrap that up is around Carter Gordon and Tom Flegler, whether they're likely to be back this season. I haven't heard anything on these two boys for a while. We spoke about them on the pod probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, Flegler is a no-go by all accounts. He's still got another nerve conduction test, I think, to come sort of mid this season in the teens somewhere, around 15 to 20 kind of range. But their all talk is next season, if at all, for Flegler. So still a bit of an uncertain situation there. Carter Gordon, once again, these are both very complex and very rare injuries. So Carter Gordon's back running at training, but it's a bit like a Tom Flegler situation where he could get to a certain point and then flatline. And so they've got to, just chill out and sit, maybe bring him back a little bit, see if he can, progress through there. So I would expect Carter back some point this season, but if you're asking for an estimate on when, I would just, you throw a dart at a dartboard. It just depends how quickly his body goes through, through the progressions of rehab and how his body handles it. Does he get significant pain as he starts to ramp things up, starts to put pressure because his was a spinal cord fluid leak? Does he start, once he starts putting pressure in on the spine and the core and those kind of things, is there like quite a bit of pain there, those kind of things? So yeah, it'll definitely be a wait and see, but I would say Gordon's a good chance of being back. Flegler not till next season.
Yeah, I think just Control-C, Control-V for what I said earlier about Brandon Smith. But even with Carter Gordon, he had to rest in bed for a long period of time there. So you lose so much strength and conditioning with that. So he may need that little bit longer just to get, strength back, endurance back, all those other things. So he needs reps, he needs time on the park. And I think with Carter Gordon, you probably expect him to come through Queensland Cup, I'd say, Brien, as well. I think would be the level they'll probably bring him through, given he hasn't played a lot of NRL footy as well. So that's probably another consideration. Next one, Brien, is about a Couchman. Is he worth selling with his high re-injury risk, or is he a hold for fantasy purposes there? He's been so good in the Dragons in the front row dual position there, hasn't he, Toby Couch?
Yeah, I just think there's he's been amazing. I just think there's way safer options in the front row or the second row at the moment. Like if you can, we've all got jewels, I'm sure, in those areas. There's just so many good options. Like a Keon Kalyn-Matangi is probably going to get jewel. The next one, I don't think he'll get it this time. But there's just, I wouldn't be holding just because of the re-injury rate. I think, provided that once again, if you've got a million other guys who are all going to be out for, 6+ weeks, or you've got a Kiraz and a lot of other different problems, but Couchman would be one of the first who I'd sell just because of that re-injury risk. What about you?
Yeah, exactly the same, mate. I think there's lots of other options you'd look into. And given that we're dealing with shoulder instability in a middle forward, I'm happy to go to a different location there and a different player for Supercoach purposes. Next one's about Dan Saifiti and Maxi Plath, Brien there. So Finn's update for the boys. They're not far away, are they? I think they've both pegged at around 12 or 13 thereabouts.
Yeah, so Max Plath is the one who we got information on. So he had surgery. It would have been Magic Round because I didn't post about him because we were otherwise busy on Magic Round. So it was reported that week that he had surgery and was going to miss 3 to 4 weeks. So, that's 10, 11, 12, probably your 3 weeks. So I'd be thinking, this is all I'm basing it off because the next question is actually a timely one because it's going to be about quality of information from certain teams. The Finns are good at kind of updating the bare basics, but then if things kind of don't match that, then it kind of goes out the window. So we got like a, update on Max Plack. It was a foot ligament injury, but he was named for the next week, if you remember all the way back. But then he obviously had surgery, and there's just been nothing on that bar the coach talking about it in that post-match presser. And then Daniel Saifiti, his was initially reported as a minor shoulder injury, and he'd be pushing for a return the week after he missed a week. And now we've heard nothing since. So I think they're kind of good at kind of giving that initial update, but then it's just radio silence. So I don't have much. I've had a few people say like potential nerve injury for Daniel Saifiti, a bit along the lines of a Tom Flegler, but whether that's just bullshit, I'm not really sure. So this is coming from a Finns fan who would love to know information on these guys. I lean towards Max Plath being out next week, just purely off the timeline that we were given. But yeah, Daniel Saifiti, I just don't really have much because they haven't given us any information.
No, and that's probably where it stands at the moment, Brian. Is it following on from that? What about you ranking, teams as they are for quality of injury information available? That's an interesting question, isn't it?
Yeah, mate. I'm not going to have time tonight, and I probably couldn't rank them 1 to 17. And I'll probably say that, like if you follow me or you're in the broadcast channel, the teams who absolutely do my head in terms of like, I think the Knights, so I won't dive into and give too many teams too hard a time, but the Knights have just they put out one injury report this year, James, and it was in round 9 to say everyone's fine. There's no injuries. And I'm like, you've had so many other weeks where there's so many injuries, like 3, 4, 5 injuries, and just nothing. No information whatsoever. So, it's just, that's a very, very interesting way to approach it. I will hang on to the teams who are quite good. I probably want to shine a light on them. So the ones who immediately come to mind are the Storm, and funnily enough, the Warriors. Like now, if we were on this podcast, if you go back, I'm sure we always used to say like injury information disappears over the Tasman, right? Because it seems like we got nothing. Every week, the Warriors, or I think they didn't do it last week, but it was like every week this season, they've come out with like their sponsored injury report, which had so much detail on it each and every week. And I've been so impressed. So shout out the Wars, up the Wars. I think they've been fantastic. And then the Storm often have like an injury video with Frank Panisi where he kind of talks through the injury, situation, how it's all going at the moment. So love to see that. The other two, I think the Bronx are usually pretty good. I think the Bronx are good from a perspective of like you've got your Pete Bedells and your Joel Goulds and these kind of guys who just are in, like there's 7 journos on one team effectively. So there's always information coming out, whereas down in Sydney, the journos have got to deal with 10 teams. So there's often not as much pressure on them. So I think the Bronx, are pretty good from that perspective. And then another team who's been really good this year has been the Dragons. I think the Dragons have, have been really forthcoming with their injury info in terms of updating us on different things, which is good. So, yeah, they're the ones I'd probably shine a lot on. I'm probably forgetting someone, so I apologize.
I'd say the Bulldogs, mate. Gus Gould.
Oh,
is
Gus,
sort
of course.
Yeah, that's probably gold medal, really. Gus is
100%.
pretty specific about things. Really,
I literally
quickly.
thought about him this afternoon. Yeah.
It's interesting.
100%.
Like the teams that are most forthcoming with that are leading the comp 1 and 2, like Dogs and Wires. It's interesting, isn't it? Like there's not much to hide there. I would say the Panthers have always been pretty.
They haven't done much this year, but they haven't had many.
Historically, they've been pretty good, haven't they?
They used to do a video with their head physio down there every week as well. So. Yeah, no, I think they've been good. They just hope, I haven't noticed that video being back this year, but maybe that's just because they haven't had many big injuries.
Yeah, fair shout. Well, next question, Brian, is about when is the Bundy Mixer back live, and is there a Magic Sponge League again this year?
I haven't heard from the Mix. We're obviously in the Bundy Bay at Magic Round, which was great, but I'm hoping the Mixer goes again this year, mate. Like I've got my eye that pouring over the women's origin stats this year. We've got a few smokies. We've been messaging each other, keeping an eye on different things, which is good. So I'm hoping the Mix is going again this year. There will absolutely be a Magic Sponge League if the Mixer lives again this year. So yeah, I'm really hoping it's back because I just love it. I think these days with SuperCoach, and we speak about it every year, like if you have a smoky, like just everyone's on that person in like a week, right? Like you know, if you bring someone in, that's why draft is so good. And we've said it time and time again, because if you have a smoky and you pick him, and then you get him for the entire year. But I just feel like SuperCoach, which is great. There's so much interest, but like you can't have this hidden gem for longer than a week or two, and then everybody is jumping on that hidden gem. Whereas in the mix, if you are good at kind of reading the women's game, which there's not much stats on, there's not much, people analyzing the games week in, week out. Hopefully there is soon. But you've got the sponge. We do, James. We're looking at the stats. We're looking at the game tape. We're on it. So we've got a sneaky little edge who hopefully she gets. That's going to be the thing, mate. I hope they get the positions better this year, because last year there
that's
are
a good point.
There are
Yeah,
a
a few
few
missing.
girls who were like not in the right position, and I think I'm really hoping Sienna Lafipo gets an edge, and I'm really hoping that Olivia Koenig plays 13.
Yeah.
And if that happens, mate, I'll be all over them like a rash.
Mate, Olivia Koenig's been a favourite of ours for many, many years on an edge, but I think she pumped out 106 mixer points in Origin 2. I mean, goodness gracious. Like the stats that she's putting up, she couldn't even get in the Australian team last year, which is like the biggest crime against humanity I've ever seen. But how good was she the other night? Like just class above, mate. She was unbelievable, Olivia Koenig. So shout out to her. She had one of the great Origin games there in the wet there at CommBank. Next one, Brien, is about, does the type of sport affect recovery time from certain injuries? So we're talking about Jason Tatum here versus Cam Murray, who have both ruptured their Achilles. It does affect things, doesn't it? Because the demands are different.
Yeah, 100%, mate. It's like, I think for those 360-degree sports that you often add in, and when I say 360-degree, like NRL is very 180. Like you've got the defensive line in front of you. Very rarely is someone coming from behind, like make a line break potentially. But sports like basketball, you're forced to do 360-degree turns, get back, go back again. AFL, soccer, these kind of sports where it's very, very much, it could be anywhere. You tend to have a little bit more demand on things like ACL recoveries. Big tendon injuries like Achilles, patella tendon, those kind of things. So basketball is just so huge on Achilles, patella tendons, those kind of things, because it's just so explosive. Like they're exploding off, really pushing off to get to those rebounds, defensive plays, all that kind of stuff, which is why we tend to see guys who, like your Kevin Durant's, who took like 18 months, and as took ages. So like as we've seen in footy, like guys come back as quick as 5 months, but it's just not going to happen in a sport like basketball where the push off is just so important. A perfect example at like talking about sporting demands is like Aaron Rodgers. We spoke like pretty extensively about how he was trying to return at like 4 months, and it was because he was just going to sit in the pocket. He was just going to sit in the pocket, try not to get sacked, and just throw. And so the demands on his Achilles weren't as high, but just as the demands increase, your rehab time and your rehab considerations do increase as well. Have I missed anything there?
No, I don't think so. I think all the boxes tick there, mate. Next question we've got is about SuperCoach cheapies you've got your eye on over the Origin period. Anyone that sort of is up in lights for you? I haven't thought about this too much, actually.
Yeah, mate. I think we'll probably have to defer this to SuperCoach Corner a little bit, I think. But like the ones who I like are pretty obvious ones, which is the Hunt from Fletcher Hunt from the Knights. I think look pretty trash, but a score over the weekend. But cheapy over this time is pretty good. Sivitalakai is a really good option if he gets named. Obviously, I just think there's a lot of, the biggest thing I'd say about cheapies is that number one, I don't hate like a one nuff in either the CTW or the forward pack, especially if they're a dual. I've already got one in my forward pack, which I've used as the auto emergency, like kind of VC loop. So I don't hate one enough. And then the other thing is too, there's a lot of good options kind of popping up around that 300K mark. Like I took a stab on Jazz Tavunga a couple of weeks ago, and that's worked out pretty well for me, probably luckily with Jake Turbo going down. But yeah, there's just quite a few options up at 300K. So I know they're kind of middle of the road, but it's not the worst play at times if you can see the right things open up. I haven't looked at it too deeply. Have you got any there for us off the top of your head?
Yeah, basement price, I think you mentioned a couple there, like Pacifica Tonga, who's in the sort of middle rotation there for the Dragons, is probably the one, isn't he? He's probably most attractive. I think Laurent Patea for the Panthers is probably in that middle rotation too. He looks like a bit of a goer. Things will emerge, Brian, I guess, as soon as we see injuries and season enders start to stack up. There are some teams that are playing younger guys there that sort of haven't had a debut yet. But I like you calling Fletcher Hunt on the wing. That's where you will see some guys debut as the year goes on.
It should be a winger at the Sharks there.
That's the other thing, is outside back at the Sharks is probably the one, even if Sivitalakai gets to centre and then someone else gets named to the wing. Because I think Mawene Hiroti is still a couple of weeks away, I believe, as well. So there's probably a decent amount of security there. So yeah, definitely a couple to watch there from that point of view. I think even just taking a price on someone who's fallen quite a lot of money. I'm going to talk about Campbell Graham next. I just froth him at his price. I just haven't got a chance to get him in yet, and he might be more around 13. But there's other guys who bottom out in price, particularly in the centre wing spot that you can play roulette with.
Yeah,
seems like Jason Saab does that every year. He gets to do in the high 2s, low 3s, and then you pump out like a 4-try game and a 3-try game, and you make 200 grand in 2 weeks. He's always got that little bit about him, Jason Saab. But high upside guys like that are playable as well from that point of view. So yeah, ones to keep eye on, most definitely, Brian. 2 more questions. So the second last one we've got is about the video that Dr. Carl put out about ice baths and recovery. I didn't see this, Brian. What did Dr. Carl talk about? Genius. Triple J icon, Dr. Carl, obviously, for those playing at home.
Yeah, mate. He just said what we already know, right? Is that like the health and wellness industry just over exaggerates the effect of these things to the nth degree. So he was pretty much saying, look, ice baths can actually, if you do them like too cold and for too long, it can actually damage like muscle growth and those kind of things. And it's better. He was saying like 10 degrees is kind of the proven, like rather than going like negatives or, 2 degrees or whatever, 10 degrees, the temperature of the water, and staying in it for a little bit longer at 10 degrees is the way to go. But mate, my main opinion on ice baths is that if you like them, sure, do them. That's my main thing that I say to patients about most of these things. If mentally it makes it more likely that you'll exercise, that you'll get out and you'll feel better the next day, then sure, go for it. If it's not going to cost you an absolute mozza, if you're going to set up a little freezer at home or something like that, you're not going to spend $3,000 on a, fancy Norwegian wood one or something like that. But the big thing I always come back to, and time and time again, is that you just need to get, like, people do these kind of things and overlook the basics. And it just happens time and time again. So the basics being diet and sleep for me are my 2 that I go back to. Like diet and sleep, if you are not sorting those 2 things out, you could have the best physio, best massage, best ice bath, best sauna, all that kind of stuff. You are missing out on the 2 prime recovery tools, diet and sleep. So the thing that you always look at, there's all these athletes who do these cryo chambers and ice baths and saunas and all that kind of stuff. And for athletes, 2 to 3% of improvement is huge, right? If you can improve your recovery 2 to 3%, that it can be the difference between you scoring that try and not scoring that try or whatever. So, and also you're on, you're playing for contracts that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and blah, 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 blah. For regular everyday people, getting a 2% improvement in your recovery from an ice bath that you've paid, $4,000 for or whatever, for me, and then you're not going and getting 8 hours sleep, you're not eating a good diet, like it's just a waste. So yeah, that would be my thing, is that if you're an everyday person, like they're not the be all and end all. I just defer back to, if you like it, if it feels good, then go for it. But don't think that it's going to be this magic thing that's going to, fix all the other things that you're missing out on. I'm sure you're pretty much on the same wavelength.
almost identical, mate. You
Yeah.
took almost the words right out of my mouth with like what you eat and how much you sleep. That's probably the two biggest things. We even preach in chronic pain, like
Yeah.
it's not only athletic stuff, it's really lifestyle stuff across
100%.
the spectrum of things of any chronic disease as well. So yeah, they're two very, very good starting points. Lifestyle things is like just cut out like, sugar, smokes and alcohol is a pretty good start as well. If you're sort of struggling of like, where do I start? Ditching those things is usually a pretty good shout as well.
Yeah,
Very
like you
last
have a
question.
$4,000 ice bath. You
Yeah,
jump
yeah.
in that, and then you go out and have 20 beers.
Yeah.
And it's just like, mate, the ice bath is not touching that. Like,
No.
not even, like
Also, 20 beers way better.
And look,
for the
like
record.
like we all love our 20 beers, right? But I'm more saying like, it's just if you're doing this and you're really like, say you're getting an ice bath because you're like, I want to be the best athlete that I can be, and I want to recover from the big gym session that I've had or whatever. It's just not even going to touch the 20 beers that you have on Saturday night. It's just not gonna.
Yeah, nice summary, mate. Very last question is about the best professional development courses that you've done as a physio. This person is a second-year private practice physio, so they're just looking for advice on the best nerdy things to get stuck into that have been useful to enhance your decision-making, to enhance your clinical capacity, problem-solving there, Brien, all the above.
Yeah, mate. Second year private practice physio. I'll give Active Care a shout out because we are currently expanding and looking. We're going to be looking for physios in the next 6 months. So if you're good and you want a job, hit me up in the DMs because we're always looking for good physios, but we will be looking for 2 or 3 in the next 6 months or so. So in Brisbane, hit me up because it's always hard to advertise on Seek and those kind of places is never fun. Best PD courses. So the way I went about it is I kind of did for my first 4 or 5 years, I did a lot of hands-on courses. So I did like dry needling, shoulder, hip, knee, these kind of courses, Achilles. I did an Achilles tendon course, I think, as well, tendinopathy, that kind of thing. So they're all good. But I'd say for me, that I pride myself, and whether I'm tooting my own horn here, but I pride myself on a lot of that stuff on like being a good mentor to the other physios. Like I think probably one of the most important things that you need, especially as a private practice physio, if you're not getting it, is a really good mentor, someone who you can regularly go to. It's not just something where you can only talk to them once a week for an hour. Like, if you have something on that day, is being able, like being in a place where it's okay to go and talk to someone and get their feedback and their advice. I think that's really important. Where I'm going with this is from a course perspective. I found the best courses that I went to from my professional standpoint was pain science stuff. And I know I'm in your wheelhouse here, James, so I'll defer to you. But just the language, particularly how I talk to patients, how I frame certain things, really wrapping my head around that pain science has been really important. And I say this as somebody who is very, very heavily pro manual therapy. So I don't want this to come across for any physios out there who are like, oh, another one of these pain science nerds who thinks you shouldn't. But like, I'm so pro manual therapy. I think it's fantastic as an adjunct to other treatments. But I think I really went to a new level. I think I've always been quite good manual therapy wise. Like getting good results, but I've just been able to help people a lot better since I had a really good understanding, particularly of like chronic pain, but also the way people approach pain and how to frame that whole discussion and those kind of things. I just found that, I became a way better physio. So I do think that getting your hands on stuff is really important. If you're a physio who likes to do that, is to sort out your manual therapy. But particularly even with the physios at our practice at the moment, like I feel like I've been driving the hands-on stuff a lot, like, really helping them kind of guide that side of things. And they've been hitting up a lot of, communication, pain science, those kind of topics, which has been really, really good. What about you, Matt? I'm sure you're probably like me, or even further in the demographic that you work with.
Yeah, pretty similar. Like I think the two better ones I've done with like the manual skills in mind is probably like APA spinal level 1, APA spinal level 2. They're both really good ones. they're pretty widely run throughout Australia, so they're not hard to get into. They cross you a pretty penny, but they are pretty decent for like, a couple multiple weekend sort of type things. And then the other ones I probably got the most out of was probably any of the Noi group sort of specific things in the pain science world. Everyone who's a physio would know of those guys. They're sort of like the little bastions of, what we know about the modern understanding to do with pain. What else apart from Noi Group? The one that's really good in the pain space, it's probably not one you want to be interested in as a second year physio, but maybe later, depending on where your interests lie, is the APS conference, which is a pain society conference that runs every year. It's a massive one. I think this year I didn't make it, but they get normally about sort of 800 or 900 people, really top note speakers from not only physio, but there's heaps across the allied health spectrum and medical spectrum. So you get a bit more in like the pharmaceutical realm, the psychological realm. It's just a bit more broad. Even psychiatry, there's a bit of psychiatry stuff in that as well. So it gives you a few more flavors that I find personally pretty interesting. I think when you're a second year, like my best advice, knowing what I know now, given that I went back into doing, post-grad study fairly recently, if you're keen on post-grad stuff, do it quick. Like, don't wait around like I did for 10 years to be like, maybe not.
You got kids and
it's just like you can do it, and a lot of it's online. But if you're thinking about it, just dive in, because you'll find once you start doing it, you'll grind away and get it done. Because my biggest thing was like, I'll never be able to do it. But then when you think about it, everywhere's got a census date. So if you just don't rate it, or if life just gets too busy, just cut it without financial penalty. Like, that's my biggest advice to anyone. If you're thinking about anything, whether you're in public or private, wherever you are, dive in deep. Probably before year 5, I reckon, if you're going to do a post-grad, because it makes it so much easier than when you get to my age and stage where I was like, having newborns and stuff like that. It was just a lot of late nights, a lot of unnecessary hardship, even though I got heaps of out of it and I really enjoyed the public health post-grad stuff. But yeah, do it early if you are going to do it. It probably doesn't change your pay rate if you're working privately, but I think if you want to go down that whatever professional pathway or enhance your learning, whatever, it's probably one of the better things to do. You can just, you chuck it on your hex and you kick that can down the road. But that'd be my advice in that space as it stands, Brian, I reckon.
Yep, 100%. I like it, James. All right, mate. We've been going for a while now. Let's get into SuperCoach Corner. We'll run through. We've addressed a lot of the big decisions and kind of how we'd approach them. But with all that in mind, how'd you go this week? But then what are your plans for next week? Because this is a big one. Round 12, we've got the first big buy. Who are you looking at trading out, and who are your targets?
Yeah, you got me in the good bloke stakes this week, Brian. So I was 11.53 with Payne Haas as the skipper. Raymond was my lowest score that dropped out there, so it was a really shame for that. This week I traded in Hosking and Jerome Hughes. So I traded out Nathan Clear and Greg Marzio. So I've got 271 to play with. As it stands for round 12, I have 14 players. If Tedesco, Terrell May, Jesse Raymond, and Dylan Lucas play. So, really Teddy and Terrell May didn't get named for New South Wales. So that probably, gets me to at least, 12. Raymond and Dylan Lucas are probably a little bit more.
Terrell May's not next week?
No. Oh, no, he's not. Sorry. He's
No.
missing. So I still only have 12. So yeah,
Yep.
I'm still not flying. But yeah, it could be quite low. I thought I'd have sort of 14, but yeah, who knows how that's going to shake out. So my plans this week, I've got to make 3 trades. So I've got to max it out. I'm going to trade Kalyn Ponga, Selwyn Cobbo, and Dylan Egan. They're all going to be missing long periods of time. And Kalyn Ponga, I've just got to move off to find a different option at fullback. I probably want to use my final boost, not this week. I probably want to use it next week, but I'm super tempted this week, Brian, to go Munster to Matt Burton, especially now he's goal kicking again at price. He's in the low 5s. The Bulldogs have a pretty tasty looking draw. Cam Munster's going to miss a lot of games over the next little bit of time. So I'm really, really tempted to use 4 trades this week. But I think I might do 3 this week, 3 next week is how I'm going to sort of shape it up. So I guess the people to trade in, I've got, like I said, 271 to play with. It's probably, Anfanil Blake, Joey Tapine, Ruben Garrick, Ola Kawatu, Britton Nickera, Tom Trbojevic, Jermaine Asako, Matt Burton, Sivitalakai. They're probably all the guys on my list. So I've just got to see, trading those guys out, how the money sort of falls and how it sort of works. So, yeah, a lot of decisions to make. I guess we do get a bonus with Corey Horsburgh not getting named for Queensland. So if you were lucky enough not to sell him out, you've got him as an extra number. But Zach Hosking was good this week, mate. Like, I think he's one that people have to consider. I thought he'd be more traded in, to be honest. I thought he'd be nearly like 50 to 100%, but a lot of people didn't go Zach Hosking, but he was pretty good. He didn't gain a heap of price, so he's only going to be in like the low 5s still, so he's not out of reach. Because I think in round 13, I think the big 2 gets here are Keon Kolomatangi and Scott Drinkwater. So I think they're 2 of the major ones. Drinky maybe not so much, given he's got a 14 rolling through his score now. So it might be a case of roll Tom Trbojevic for a few weeks and see if he can give you anything. And then if not, try to get all the way up to Drinkwater at that stage if you leak some cash. For people in downgrades in round 13, I think I still like Campbell Graham at price, Brian. I know I'll bang on about that every week, but I just like what I see out of Campbell Graham, and he hasn't got any attacking stats yet this year. Like, it's just got to come. He's too good a player. He's in a team that eventually is going to get some cattle back in round sort of 14-ish, give or take. So I still want to get him in. Pacifica Tonga at the front row is probably the cash out option because I didn't trade in LKT this week in the 6th position. So, there might be someone there, that, in the bottom dollar range at front row 4 that you like. Fletcher Hunt, like you said, scored a 9, didn't look great. The Knights look like, they're going terribly, but he's a bottom price winger. So he still could be useful through that period, even though, I thought of having more Newcastle guys on my team makes me vomit a little bit in my mouth. But that's the game you have to play if you're going to try and get a few extra dollars up your sleeve to trade some guys in. So, yeah, as it stands, 3 this week, 3 next week is what I'm going to do, with the goal of definitely trying to get to Keon Kolomatangi in round 13 because obviously he misses the bye this week. But yeah, I'm going to be close to 13. I think I might be, maybe 13 this week, maybe 12, depending on sort of how the trades fall this week. But yeah, I don't know what my priorities would be there, mate. I think, AFB and Tapane, I think that's a coin flip scenario. I think, Tapane still scored really well, scored 70 in base today in power, didn't he? So he's still good. But AFB's got that little bit of extra attacking upside, I suppose. So you're risking it
cheaper
there.
too.
A little bit cheaper as well. Sivatagai is worth a look if he's a starting centre, I think. So if he's a starting centre pending team list, he's probably a good little plug and play there for a bit of time. I know I was talking about him in the preseason, but I really like Matt Burton at price, Brian. Like, I think if he's back goal kicking, he could be really, really, really good in a really strong Bulldogs team. And then Britt Nicker, Tom Trbojevic, I think it's turbo time for me. It's got to be him at fullback for Ponga. And then I'll see what I can do out of Selwyn Cobbo and Dylan Egan to get a couple of updates there with 271. So I could probably get in like the mid-low 6s. So I'm probably looking at like a Nikora and maybe a Ruben Garrick sort of type option there. I don't love the Ruben Garrick trading because I traded him out when he was 800. But, if Manly aren't losing that many over the origin period, he's almost a have. He's got to be a have when you look at everyone else. No one's going to have
price at the
Kiraz.
moment?
He's in the
He's
in the mid 6s, I think, to be honest. I think he's about 660 and he's going to lose a little bit. So he's about 650 by the time it's all said and done, I reckon, or maybe just a bit shy of that. So he's not sort of super high out of reach. So again, I sold him at 800. You get him back in at 650, thereabouts. Not the worst play in the world. So yeah, I don't know.
I think he scored 50. He scored 50 on the weekend, did nothing, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that's
think,
right. Yeah, you could do worse. Even Olin Kawatu's got that bit of extra ceiling there that I wouldn't mind seeing a bit of that action with him in over this period there. He's sort of bottomed out nicely in price now from he started at 670, didn't he? So he hasn't bottomed out too much, but he's at that price where he's reasonably reachable, reasonably affordable. I don't really have anyone in the pod conversation, Brian, because I had Connor Tracy and Jesse Raymond as my 2 pods, but Connor Tracy got heaps of trading this week because I think the playbook guys got in this week, and I think thousands of people trade him in. So I got a bit stitched up there. I had him in Magic Round because I took him in Magic Round, and I was like, oh yeah, we'll go this way. And then Jesse Raymond scored 6, so yeah, I haven't really got many pod options up my sleeve there. I guess Mark Nwanga-Nitawase is probably a good sneaky one. You're gonna have to shell up to get him though. He'd be in the high 6s by now. I think Tedesco's the primo option that everyone should be looking at this week though. He's been scoring so well this year. The Roosters will be good enough. Their bye coverage period is really good as well. So he's probably top of the list, but I think it's turbo. It's wheels up again, Brian. I know we joked about this a few weeks ago, but I think he's going to be back in the team at his price with Ponga doing very little. I think that's a very easy sideways trade to make. I think I'll be like every other super coach, to be honest.
Yeah, mate. I think just looking at the draw for next week, I just think that Doggies Finns game is the game to target. Like I would not be sad by owning Connor Tracy at this point in time, even though he scored the way he did. Because I love my Finns. Don't get me wrong, but they're going to lose Hammer, and they've lost Tom Gilbert. Yeah. Mate, that's going to be an absolute bloodbath. So Matt Burton is a great shout. I'm very tempted to go Munster to him. Is one that I'm eyeing off to earn me a nice bit of cash and go. But look, my big trade is to bring in Teddy. I want to go Ponga to Teddy. I think Kiraz being out makes it pretty easy to go Kiraz down and then Teddy up. but I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. Oh, actually, I should say 12-23. I captained May, the first captain that I've got right in so many weeks. Like that, I just finally got one, which is good. So I brought in LKT at 5'8", which I felt shit about all week, but I really wanted Joey Taps because, mate, I'm warming to big boy season. I know that's not controversial to say, but I just I loved bringing in Tapane and just knowing like I was going to get a solid 70 as like a base and then maybe a bit more if he's getting some attack. And these guys are getting attack pretty. Like I even saw Joey Taps today, mate, because I was like, please do well because I've traded you in. And he's offloading near the line, putting little balls. So I'm like, the attack is definitely there for these guys. AFB's just scored another try. Yeah. So, yeah, mate, like my two that I'm really eyeing off, like I think Teddy's my number one. I really want Teddy. But Keon is an absolute lock for me either this week or next week. I don't know whether I go a week early on him just because, well, I've already got 14, I should have said. I've already got 14 for round 12. So I can make a few luxury trades with the thought of I'll only get 2 trades next week, which might have to make up some origin injuries or, something like that. But I love Keon is my lock. Like he's coming in either this week or next day. Him and Teddy are my 2 locks. And then I want like maybe an Aaron Clark, but more than likely an AFB because all those guys are sub 700 grand. And I look at the likes of like Herbie Farnworth, KL Iro, those kind of guys. And like I love what they do and they're absolute guns. But like the whole thing of like I'm sitting there watching the Finns and Herbie didn't get much until like the last 5 minutes. And I'm like, it can't keep happening every week, surely, right? Whereas like you just know with a Fanua Blake or an Aaron Clark, you're getting 60 to 70 minutes if it's Aaron Clark of playing in the middle. You're basing like 70. Before you even get out of bed, you got 70. And then it's like if they can sneak a little attack. So, yeah, I think I'm going back to like 2013, 2014, mate, when we had Craig Fitzgibbon, Anthony LaFranchi, Hindy, Gallen, Parker. I kind of want to stack the pack, and specifically, like I want to stack the big boys. Like I want Keon at second row, even though he's playing prop. I want Aaron Clark at second row, even though he's playing prop. Like my only hesitation to bring in AFB was I would lock myself out of having a cheapie in front row. Like Pacifica Tonga would be the guy who I'd want to bring in next week as a downgrade potentially. But if I bring in AFB, I've got Haas, Tapane, May, and AFB in the front row, which like is hot. Don't get me wrong, but I'm like, if a good front row cheapie pops up, then you kind of handcuffed a little bit there. So yeah, I'm all in on the big boys. All in the big boys. I think it's Teddy number one for me. Then because that'll take me to 15. So he's probably the only trade I really need to make this week. But I can't go straight to him because I don't have enough money. And my flex isn't working. So I'll have to make at least one other trade. So I think it's probably going to be maybe either Kiraz down to a cheaper option or potentially Dylan Egan down to like maybe I go to Pacifica Tonga this week, Egan to him and then up to Ponga. But then next week, mate, Keon is just locked. Like he'll be 600k, maybe a little bit over, and he's going to play big minutes for the Rabbits. Like it's not a hot take because he just got 100. But yeah, I'm really looking to that. And then I don't hate like looking at an Aaron Clark or an AFP. Maybe I'll get, suck it into an Aaron Clark or something this week as well. But I like the idea of stacking the pack. And we always get CTW cheapies, mate, who have, high upside. Like Tamale is still like he scored 70 something today. Like I'm happy to just leave him like as my CTW 4-5 and just like keep going. Like Rob Toya, every now and then I'll have a big game if he has a good matchup, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm thinking the pack might be where I want to go. Like a guy like Hosking is a wonderful buy as well. So do you jump on him too? Yeah, mate. I'm all about the pack. That's boring because we're usually big outside back guys. But I think it's more for me. Like I want to get have the good 2 halfbacks. So I've got I really would like to get to 2 good 5'8s, which I think I've kind of stitched myself a little bit there and bringing in LKT and then good fullbacks. But I think CTW is where I'm happy to have a couple of cheapies just because there's so many, that and hooker. The one hooker one who I would say for a point of difference, and probably not for this week, but next week, once again, not saying anything controversial because he just scored like 150 or whatever he scored, but Coruscant,
God.
Mate, there's no hooker on the bench, I don't think. From what I looked.
Talon Silva's been floating around, but
he was dropped this week, is more what I was saying.
yeah.
So like he wasn't there this week. So yeah, that, and he's only like mid 400s. I think that score obviously probably kicking him up to 500. But like, you know, if you could potentially go like a Sandon, Smith straight to him, that could be a good little pod luxury trade as well if Talon Silva's not on the bench anymore. So I think we've given people enough options. It's an hour 40 in, mate. We better wrap it up. You got anything else to add, or we'll end it there?
No, I don't think so, mate. I think there's lots of good options, lots of carnage, which I think just blows up teams a little bit and makes it a bit more exciting because everyone's teams, you know, you think, oh, I'm sweating on this trade. Everyone's got the same team. Don't sweat your trades. Just go with your gut and, you know, don't be afraid to go somewhere different because honestly, everyone's like, oh, what can I do with my team? Everyone's got the same team. So don't overthink it. You can just do whatever you want and go a bit loose. That'd be my advice there, mate.
Yeah, mate. I was in like 4 matchups this week where I had less than 5 players different. You know, and once again, play draft. Anyone out there, like, go and play draft is my number 1 advice. But number 2, and we say this every year, mate, and this is probably us huffing a bit of copium, you know, for our shit ranks every year. But no one cares or knows the difference whether you finish 1,000th or you finish 20,000th. Like, unless you are, like, in my opinion, unless you're coming first, but unless you're like right up there, no one gives a shit. Like, you're not going to be able to put, like, I see some of the like Twitter bios at times being like, you know, I finished 5th in 2017 or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, like that's pretty cool. But you're not going to put like finished 830th in, you know, 2020. Like, no one cares. So just go balls to the wall. Try and like, you're not going to, you know, if you're currently coming like where we are in the multiple thousandths, just go for it and try and strike gold. Because yeah, playing conservative and stuff, like, especially like my thing, I hear a lot of people, and once again, very biased here, talking about saving trades. Like, oh, I really want good like trade numbers from round 26, you know, from round 25, 26 and 27 when there's all these rule outs. And I'm like, what? So you can go from, you know, maybe 5,000th to 2,000th. Like, it's just like, I don't think it's going to make that much difference at that point. So yeah, go balls to the wall is my advice. That is a wrap for this week, guys. If you like the pod, give us a review, recommend to a friend. And before I say my final thing, we just all need to listen to this again.
The magic sponge, Gus.
Magic sponge fixed everything.
Magic sponge fixes everything, guys. And up the mighty Redcliffe Dolphins.